Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're doing the rear discs and pads on a Renault Master 3. The Mark 3 runs from 2010 to 24 and I'm doing it on a 2020 model. So let's get out there and get a start on this job and I'll show you how to do it step by step. We want to start by chocking up our wheels. Can't find my wheel chocks, so a bit of wood will do. And then next we're going to move on to loosening off the wheel nuts before we raise the wheel off the floor. Next you want to jack up the van and then use some axle stands. I've got these nice big blocks of wood, so I prefer these over axle stands. That's much more secure, especially on the rear axle because it's square, so it sits under there nicely. So now the wheel's off the floor, the bolts are loose, we can remove all the bolts. And then remove the wheel. Now we can get to the disc. Now that the wheel is off, I've just taken a bit of time to wire brush all these, clean them up a bit. Next I'm going to clean up the caliper with a wire brush before I remove the rotor. I'm also going to spray this with a bit of penetrating spray to let that soak. And before I take any of this off, I'm actually going to clean these wheel arches. Now it's not too bad, but mud sitting around here is what's going to hold water and eventually eat into the metal, so it's going to corrode it quicker. So this is like I do on all my cars, just clean these wheel arches, make sure there's no mud sitting in there to hold water. Although I think this van is galvanised, so it should last a lot longer. But I'm going to do that, and then once that's clean I'll get on to removing the discs. Now I've given that wheel arch a good clean all around, and all around everywhere I can see pretty much from here, all the suspension components. I cleaned that off with just a bucket and a sponge, and then I'm using a paraffin gun, luckily enough to have an air compressor, and this is really good for cleaning. Cleaned all around hard to reach bits with this. Just shoots compressed air with water, you can put anything in it you want, so I just put hot water with soap in it, and then you can put on any other stuff, cleaning products, anything, but for this case I just put the hot water and soap, and given everything a good clean. So now I'm going to take it all apart, and then I've got brake cleaner which I'll clean all around all the brake. Moving on to the other side, now I have cleaned it, I've jacked it up and removed the wheel, same process as the other side. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my maintenance spray, I'm going to spray this, not much left in there. Spray the slider bolts because they get a bit rusty on the end. Spray the bolts holding the caliper on, which are there, 18mm, and then there's one down the back there. And the slider bolts, if I can get to the behind it. We'll just let that soak in. With the handbrake on, the first thing we're going to do is loosen this nut here, and then we can take the handbrake off, and then we can start removing the handbrake cable and the caliper and everything that we need to remove to get this stripped down. I've loosened this off, it's a T40, so what I'm going to do is just take it out and clean it up while the handbrake's still on, because this bit gets a bit stiff because it's rusty on the end. The thread is protected, but the end is still open to the elements, so we'll take it out. I'll wire brush the end there and then put it back in. So this means when I take it out later, it's going to be easy to remove and the hub won't turn while I'm trying to undo it. Because at the moment handbrake's still on, but we're going to take all this off next, and then yeah, so this is already done, so later it's going to be an easy job for me to do. With the handbrake off, the first thing I'm going to do is push this forward with my finger and then put this screwdriver in there, or a screwdriver, and then I can lever that and pull that cable out. I need 2 hands to do it, so can't show you. And then after that, the next thing I do would be to remove these caps. There's one there and there's one at the bottom, and these are the slider pins, and then you get a bit of shit build up around here, so just give that a clean, and I'll do the same for the bottom one. Once I've cleaned them, I'll put the cap back on, and then I'm going to remove the handbrake as I just said. There's a little retaining clip that goes on here, so it's just that one there, so I pulled that off and now remove it, and then I should be able to remove the handbrake cable. Now I'm ready to take the slider pins out. Before undoing these slider pins, I just gave all this a wire brush on top because when I pull it off it's going to be upside down, so I wire brushed it and sprayed it. And then this one was a bit of a fucker to get out, so I've had to jack the van up a bit higher because I couldn't get the bar at the right angle, and I had to literally lay under the van with 2 hands on the bar. I'm using like a 2-inch extension bar, and then you need a longer Allen key, 8mm, to get in there. I do have a smaller one for 3/8, but it's just not long enough. Just the sort of generic standard sets you get, so you need to get one of these extended ones to get into there to undo it. And then yeah, you'll probably need this little 2-inch bar as well, because otherwise the leaf spring's in the way. Loosen that one off with just the bar and the fitting on it, no extension. But this one, I needed to get over that and get more leverage on it, so it's a bit tricky, but it's undone now. So now I'm going to remove this caliper and then cable tie it to the leaf spring. After you've loosened the slider pins, just use a screwdriver to push them out the other end like that, and then put them in a little bag to keep them safe because they're covered in grease, so you don't want to get them contaminated. And then I've done the bottom one already, so then just put the cap back on as well, because we don't want to get that contaminated in there. Now both slider pins are removed and the caps are back on, and then we can just pry the caliper out of the holder. I'm going to do it like this at the top and then a little bit at the bottom, and keep doing that until I can get it off. But I'm going to have to put the camera away and hold it because I don't want it to drop. Before I cable tie this on here, I'm going to remove the brake pads. I'm only doing it in this order just for the video. And I'm going to wire brush this before I cable tie it on there. I've given that a good scrub with a wire brush, so once I push the piston back in I'll be able to get to these a little bit better, give it another little clean. So I've also wire brushed this all the places I can see and get to, because once it's off it's hard to hold it in place and wire brush it. So I've even removed these and brushed around there. And now I'm going to break this loose. It's an 18mm hex nut, and you're probably going to need a breaker bar on it again because it's going to be real tight. So I'm going to do both of these, remove it, clean it all, and then I can finally remove the disc. Now we're ready to remove the disc. So chances are it's probably seized on here, rusted on here. So we're going to remove this little bolt and give it a wriggle. It probably won't come off, so what we're going to do is we're going to tap it here, but on the other side, and then just rotate it and keep tapping it, and eventually it will come loose. I say tap it, we're going to whack it with a hammer. And so I've got this little one. It's easier to get in there because it's small. If I can't get it with that one, I'll get a bigger one. So we're going to try that and see how it goes. That did take a good whacking to get that off, but I've done it with a little hammer anyway, and now it's off. So we're going to wire brush everything now, so the new disc sits nicely on there. Get rid of all this crap out of there, and wire brush all this while we're at it. We'll get it all looking nice and clean, and then we'll spray it with brake cleaner. It's all been wire brushed, so I took the opportunity to clean it all down. I couldn't get to it when the disc was on, so I will now give that a spray with brake cleaner into all the little bits I couldn't get the sponge into, and clean all this. But first I need to go and get a new brake rewind tool because my one doesn't fit. This one, the hole centers are about 18mm I think, and my one I have is about 22, so I'm going to need to go and get a universal one, so hopefully that one fits, and then I will give this a good spray down before we put it all back together. With everything removed, we have better access, so now I'm going to compress the piston back in. But before I do that, I'm going to open the bonnet, remove the filler cap, and I've just put a glove over there so it can allow the pressure to push out, and then just putting that just to stop the glove from falling off to protect it. So that means I know I'm not going to get contaminated in my filler tank now. So now that's done, I'm going to go and wind the brake piston back in. I had to buy this JBM universal brake rewind tool because the one I had didn't fit and I was struggling to find one. So this one here, if you can see, it has 2 sliding pins, so it's adjustable, so it's pretty good. And then it has left hand and right hand thread. This is just a normal right hand thread. So now I'm going to wind that in, and then we can get the disc mounted back on. Now I've wound the piston back in, I've given it a clean, so we're ready to get the disc on. So the retaining bolt, I've just put a load of copper grease on it. This is just going to stop it from seizing. And then we're going to get that wound in there. I have to use 2 hands to do this. The brake holder's been cleaned, so I've greased the mating edges of everything, and then the threads as well, and I've greased the flange on the nut and the thread. So now I'm going to get this mounted back on, and I don't actually know the torque settings, so I'm going to go and find them out now, and then I'll torque it up to the correct setting. When fitting the caliper back on, you need to be careful not to get the rubbers caught. It's tricky, but there's techniques to doing it. Now there's a rubber on the piston as well, so make sure that it doesn't get caught as you push it onto the pad, and there's one here. Now this one was slightly damaged from the last person who changed the pads, so I'm starting at the bottom, and I'm going to put the bottom pin in first but not push the caliper all the way on. That means I can get a bit more wiggle room to get it in there. Now with that one's in, tightened in a little bit, I've turned it in a bit. Now I'm just going to push this caliper over, trying to get this rubber to go in, because it's all tight when the pad's brand new. It's really tight, so there's not much room, and then as the wear down, the rubber expands out. So trying to get it on is quite tricky, especially if your piston is a bit rusted, so it's going to catch. So try and clean that up first. But yeah, I've got the bottom one in, so now I'm going to turn that in and get that top one in. Once you've got the slider pins in and torqued to the right settings, then you've got the on this side the brake pad wear sensor. Just clips in down there, and the handbrake cable back in, so you just push that with your finger and slide it in, and that is job done. I've just got to get the wheel back on now. One last job to do before we put the wheel on is just check that it all moves freely, because if it's not turning, then we want to know now before we put the wheel back on. But that's all good, so we're ready to get the wheel back on. Once both calipers are compressed, don't forget to put the cap back on. The last thing to do now is just to pump the brake a few times, just to get everything back to where it should be. If you like this video or found it helpful, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll be bringing out more videos around the Renault Master.